right, welcome. Today we are tackling a classic system design interview problem, the library management system. We're going to break this thing down, step by step, so you can walk into your next interview and absolutely nail it. So let's just start with the big picture, right? Before we even think about code or databases, let's ask the simple question. You've got thousands of books, thousands of members. How in the world do you keep track of who has what and when do you need it back? That's it. That's the core problem we're solving today. Okay, before we get all technical, let's just ground ourselves in reality. Think about an old school library, with the little cards in the back of the book. The librarian takes it, stamps a date, and writes your game in a big ledger. See, it's not magic. All we're really doing here is building a super fast, super smart digital version of that exact same system. Okay, so here's our game plan. First, we'll figure out the main building blocks. Then we'll see how they all talk to each other. We'll walk through borrowing and returning, deal with the messy stuff like overdue books, and then we'll talk about how to really think like a pro. All right, first things first, we need to identify the core components. You can think of these as the main nouns in our system. What are the things we actually have to track? Let's figure that out. Well, obviously, we have to start with the book itself. But it's not just about the title and author, right? The really crucial detail here is tracking total copies versus available copies. I mean, it doesn't help you to know the library owns 10 copies of a book if all 10 of them are already checked out. That available copies number is everything. And of course, we've got our members. These are the people borrowing the books. We need to know who they are, sure, but that membership status is super important. Is their account active? Or is it maybe suspended because they have a bunch of overdue fines? We'll need to check that before we let them borrow anything else. So this is maybe the most important piece of the puzzle. How do we actually connect a specific book to a specific member? That's where the loan record comes in. It's the glue that holds this whole system together. It's basically the digital receipt that says, okay, this person has this book, they checked it out on this day, and it's due back by this date. Simple, but powerful. And, it's gonna happen. People are gonna return books late, so we need a way to handle that. That's what the fine is for. It's a simple little record that gets automatically created when a loan goes overdue. It just keeps track of how much they owe and, hopefully, whether they've paid it. Okay, so we've got our four main players: book, member, loan, and fine. Now let's figure out the rules of the game. How do they all fit together? The rules here are actually pretty simple, but they're what makes the whole system work. So think about it. One member can totally borrow a bunch of books at once, right? So one member, many loans. And one book over its lifetime is going to be loaned out hundreds of times. But, and this is key, each individual loan record connects exactly one member to one book. And if that loan goes overdue, it can create one fine. It's this one-to-one and one-to-many logic that keeps everything from becoming a mess. All right, we've got the blueprints. Now let's see this thing in action. Let's walk through the most common things a user will do: borrowing a book and then bringing it back. So when a member wants to borrow a book, the system has a little checklist to run through. First, is this member even active? Do they owe a ton of money? Second, is the book they want actually on the shelf? Remember that available copies count? We check if it's greater than 0. If we get a green light on both, then we create a new loan, stamp it with today's date and a due date, and, this is super important, we knock that available copies count down by 1. That book is now officially checked out. Now, the return process is pretty much the reverse. The member brings the book back, the system finds their original loan, and marks it as closed. But here's the interesting part. The system checks, hey, was this returned after the due date? If the answer is yes, bam, that's the trigger to create a fine. And then, the final step, we add 1 back to the available copies count. The book is back on the digital shelf, ready for the next reader. Okay, so we've covered what happens when everything goes perfectly. But let's be real, that's not how the world works. A truly good system shines when it handles the exceptions, the messy stuff. So let's dive into what happens when books are overdue. I mean, this is probably the most common headache for any library, right? Late books. So how does our system deal with this automatically and, fairly? The beauty of this is that it's all automated. The system knows what day it is. The moment today's date is later than a loan's due date, that loan gets flagged as overdue. It's that simple. Then, when the member finally returns the book, the system sees the flag and automatically generates the fine. We can even have it send out an email right away. No human intervention needed. It's just a clean, logical sequence. Let's put some numbers on this. Say the library charges, I don't know, 5 rupees a day. If a book is 5 days late, the system just does the math. 5 times 5 is 25. A fine record for 25 rupees is created. It's simple, it's consistent every single time, and there are no calculation errors. But a really great system doesn't just wait for things to go wrong. It tries to prevent them. We can set up an automated reminder system. Think of it like a little alarm clock that goes off every night. It scans all the loans and sends out helpful emails. Hey, your book is due in a couple days reminder. It's due today alert. And then the it's overdue notification. This is great for members and helps the library get its books back faster. Okay, so we have a really solid design here. It works. But in an interview, you want to take it to the next level. You want to show you're thinking about the future. So how would we make this system ready for the real world, like a huge library system with millions of books and tons of users? This is where you drop a few key terms to show you're thinking about scale and performance. You could mention database indexing, which is literally like the index at the back of a book, making searches for a title way, way faster. Or you could talk about caching, which is like keeping the most popular books on a special, easy-to-reach shelf so you can grab them instantly. These are the kinds of things that show you're not just designing for today, but for a system that can grow and handle a lot of traffic. So let's just boil this all down into your interview checklist. 1. Start with your core entities, your nouns like book and member. 2. Clearly define how they're all related. 3. Walk the interviewer through the main user actions, step by step. 4. Show them you've thought about what happens when things go wrong, like with overdue books. And 5. Sprinkle in those pro-level ideas about scale and edge cases. You follow that roadmap and you're going to have a fantastic answer. And there you have it. That's how you can break down and design a library management system. But I'll leave you with one last thing to chew on, a great follow-up question. We've talked about overdue books, but what if a member just loses the book? What happens then? That's a whole different can of worms, right? Thinking about those kinds of edge cases is what separates a good answer from a great one. Thanks for tuning in.